We are the first real water pub.
Real water?
Yes, yes.
What sort of real water do you stock then?
All sorts. So we've got alpine mineral water, we've got island stream water, we've got Windermere lake water, we've got Canada dry water, Red Indian running water.
Canadian glacier water, Vadvilla is a French water, artesian water from Patagonia, iceberg water with absolutely no mineral content, volcanic water from New Zealand, the Scottish water, Speyside Glenlivet, English water.
Still funny, but no longer far-fetched. The Ronnies nailed the absurdity 20 years ago. But now we happily buy bottled water for hundreds of times the price of what flows from our taps.
Quite a selection. You seem to have water on the brain.
Yes, we've got that up here, so there we are.
Here in Claridge's Hotel in London, they have a water menu with over 30 to choose from.
This one is a very interesting one, which is a cloud juice one, which is a rainwater water. So this is actually collected straight from the sky and it goes straight to the bottle.
So I'm laughing because cloud juice, as you said, is just another word for rain.
At £9 a bottle, what exactly does rainwater taste like?
I am 100% sure that you're going to pick up some difference in it.
There's more of a taste to it, if you like.
Yes.
There's a little bit more there.
Yeah. And then there is an aftertaste. Can you feel it in your mouth as well?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I can. I probably just don't have a very educated palate when it comes to water.
Well, my jaded taste buds couldn't tell the difference, so can the experts? This water's being tested by sommeliers for Decanter Wine magazine. Can they tell which is the London tap and which is the dearest?
It's tough. It's tough. It's not like tasting wine, definitely. Very, very subtle differences between the waters. Some almost imperceptible.
So did anyone get it right?
The most expensive water was number 10, again from New Zealand. £21 for just less than a litre at Claridge's. Terry, I've got you down here as saying that the most expensive was actually number 16, which was the Thames tap water. You gave it 19, Terry.
Yeah, I did. I thought it was delicious.
So, with no one spotting the tap water, indeed it being mistaken for the most expensive bottle, we can't damn it for taste. What about its effect on our bodies? Does the drinks industry think there is any risk with tap water?
Tap water is perfectly safe, there's no doubts about that. But there's other reasons for people choosing bottled water.
There's no doubt that tap water is perfectly safe.
Of course it's safe.
And it's perfectly healthy?
Yeah.
So, you don't think that bottled water is, in many ways, a kind of con? It's not the emperor's new clothes, it's the emperor's new drink.
I think many people enjoy drinking bottled water, different types of water from different sources. Will have a different mineral composition, so a different taste. People might choose still or sparkling. People like to have bottled water with them when they're travelling. There's lots of good reasons for choosing bottled water.
But there is a perfectly good alternative when it comes to water. Virtually free, much less environmental impact that comes out of your tap in the home. What could be more convenient than that?
But you're not comparing like with like. Bottled water offers many things that tap water doesn't.
Well, this is the nub, isn't it? Water is water. One's brilliantly marketed, the other comes out of the tap. Are they really that different?
Well, the people who are choosing bottled water think so. There's a wide range of differences between them. The confidence that people can have in bottled water, you know where it's come from, it will say so on the label. You've got a traceability. Also, I mean, people look to bottled water for emergencies if the supply of tap water is interrupted. Remember the flooding in Gloucestershire in the summer of 2007. You know, people turned to bottled water in those instances. It's extremely important. We have a bottled water industry.
Nobody likes being told what to do or lectured about the environment, and that includes me. But I do want to test the case for this industry, and you can decide if it holds water. Why do you drink bottled water?
When I'm on the go, it's just easy to carry it around, buy a bottle, drink it, and then throw it away.
Convenience.
Because it tastes better, and so therefore I think it's probably better for you.
The biggest difference between tap water and bottled water is the way it gets to us. One is piped to almost every home in the country, while the other is shifted hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles to a shop before we move it again. Much of that transport is fossil fuelled. And when combined with production leads to a very different carbon footprint. A litre of Thames water emits 0.3 grams of carbon dioxide equivalent. Compare this to a litre of Volvic, bottled and shipped from France, creating 185 grams. Over 600 times that of tap water, and that's roughly the same pollution as driving your car for a kilometre. Evian, which also comes from France, produces 172 grams. Of the other big sellers, Buxton won't tell us their carbon footprint. Highland Spring and Aquapura are still working theirs out.
Taste all right to you?
Very good.
This is a government advisor on sustainable food policy, and he's a man on a mission.
We've got to make people think it's unfashionable, just like we've done with smoking. Bottled water really ultimately is an energy waste. It's energy being used to transport it to us, energy reflected in the plastic bottles which are thrown away and go into landfill, or if it's glass, even worse, huge amounts of energy being generated and used in the making of it, all to throw it away, all to pee it out. I mean, think of it. You can get water through a tap. It's safe, it's sound, you pay for it already, it's way cheaper.
So how did it get to be so popular? Well, back in the 70s, when I had the grooviest of hairstyles, we drank barely any bottled water. But then, with its novel fizz and sparkling mix of humour with Gallic chic, Perrier opened up our wallets. I met with one of their marketing wizards.
I think the Perrier campaign is seen as a great success within the marketing industry because the commentators were saying this is doomed to failure and how can you actually sell water to a cynical British public. Financial Times famously back in 1974 said that Perrier would only be drunk by cranks and foreigners, and then 11 years later admitted that Perrier had become an iconic brand.
Talk me through why you think it was successful. Did it tap into something, a little bit of snobbery maybe, on behalf of those who are buying it?
Well, I think the way the advertising worked with the whole O and the different puns, if you like, that we used throughout the advertising campaign, it was a bit like setting up a bit of a club. You know, if you could decode the advertising, somehow you were part of the club of this exclusive Perrier brand, and that connected you in some way to the brand itself.
And yet the bottled water market is now worth £2 billion a year in this country. Am I kind of missing the point, not being involved in marketing?
I think arguably you could level that argument at any brand. You know, take watches, for example. People spend £10,000 on a watch that tells the time perfectly as well as a $12.99 watch. But people buy into the promise that a particular watch brand is giving you and a lifestyle and all of the rest of it. That's the role of brands, in part.
And to maintain that brand appetite, around £10 million a year is spent on advertising. So we asked the people who spend our money how much of it they spend on water from bottles and coolers. Government departments, over £1 million. The councils of England and Wales, nearly £5 million. Even the BBC spent over £300,000 on bottled water last year just in its London offices. The Health Link drives water's other big promotion, sports sponsorship. Aquapura supplies Britain's great runs. This is the Great South Run in Portsmouth. 62,000 bottles of water for 11,500 athletes.
So how much of this precious and packaged water is actually being drunk? Well, here, I think barely a mouthful on that one. That one, maybe a quarter. The rest of it, just going to waste.
The bottles trail out behind the runners like a plastic smear in the gutter. Portsmouth's waste team remove them.
Bit of a knack to this. Yes, there is. Dropped a few already. How big a job is this for you?
Quite big.
Yeah?
Quite big, yes.
And they're heavy, aren't they? 'Cause,
yes, they are.
I've only been doing it about half a minute, and it's already heavy because they're full of water.
Yes.
The clean-up cost the local council £10,000, and most of the bottles here were recycled. But overall, only 1 in 4 of all plastic bottles from our homes are used again. Some are burnt to make energy, a potent fuel as they're made of oil. In fact, there's enough oil used in the production process of water bottles in the UK to keep 17,000 cars on the road for a year. But most bottles, over 2/3, will end up on a landfill site, and within 10 years they could be full. So, is the industry, which employs 3,000 people here, now facing up to this pollution and waste?
Well, it's clearly important, every economic activity, making this TV programme has a carbon footprint. And there's clearly, we're looking at ways, how can we reduce the carbon footprint? And there's lots of things that we're doing which are actually bringing that carbon footprint down. For example, if you take the packaging that we use, a typical bottle, plastic bottle, will have 30% less plastic in it than it did, say, 10 or 15 years ago. That's reducing the impact. The recycling rates are growing, encouraging people to recycle more bottles. That will reduce the impact. We're using more of that recycled material in the original bottles. That will reduce the environmental impact.
But here, the impact is felt now. The Dorset coast, like much of the shoreline, reveals the rubbish in the sea. Richard Thompson has been watching the rising tide of plastic.
Just around the turn of the century, the statistics that we had were that around 100 million tonnes of plastic were being produced every year globally. Now, if I look to figures from the Plastic Manufacturing Association, we're up to 225 million tonnes of plastic produced every year.
Sorry, so it's more than doubled in the 7 years since the turn of the century?
That's what the statistics show, yeah.
That's astonishing. And of course, bottled water isn't the sole contributor there, but where do you put it in the scale of importance?
In terms of the types of debris we're finding on shorelines, bottled water, bottled drinks, a substantial proportion of the debris that we're finding. And it seems particularly unnecessary when you consider that these packaging materials are used once and then thrown away, and yet the plastic that's used to make those materials will last in the environment for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Volunteers from Beach Watch, who clean up the coast, have seen the amount of plastic bottles nearly double in the last 10 years.
OK, Tom, this is the sort of problem we're up against. We've been cleaning the beach for 4 years here. We're encountering more and more of these. They even go to the trouble of screwing the tops back on.
And there's loads. There's some here, but there's more around the back here.
Oh, there's hundreds. If you walk along here, you'll find hundreds.
Bottles are the eyesore, but there's a hidden threat too. The raw material that makes most plastic products. Granular pellets lost overboard from ships and down drains from factories are often washed up on the beach.
Well, at first glances, it doesn't look like there's very much rubbish on the beach at all. But if you take a closer look here, the whole beach is covered in trillions, I mean trillions of nurdles. This is raw plastic, plastic in its raw form. So everything plastic.
They look like tiny pebbles, but actually each one of these is a bit of plastic, you say?
It is, yeah, yeah.
And there are, as you say, trillions
of them.
Does it matter?
It does matter. Seabirds eat these things once they're floating on the surface of the sea. Birds that feed off the surface, like guillemots and fulmars, will eat these. They attract lots and lots of different toxins, which will poison the birds. So if the birds don't actually choke on the plastic itself, the toxins will kill them anyway.
The number of fulmars around our shores is down by 1/3 since the 1990s. Plastic is one prime suspect. Scientists have found plastic in 94% of fulmars' stomachs, each one containing an average of 37 separate bits. And while our seabirds suffer from waste plastic, we continue to buy shiny new plastic wrapped around water from across the oceans.
This Fiji water, for example, that we have here, and we have it here for many, many years, people know it's one of the best water in the world as well.
Fiji water?
Yes, from Fiji Island.
Oh, it's actually from Fiji, that's
yes.
not just the brand name?
Yes, yes. But this is, you know...
I'm staggered. I mean, why bring water from Fiji? I don't quite get it. Is it just because it makes people feel good because they think of Pacific Islands?
Well, I think there is, you know, there is a combination of everything. I think people are truly Some people truly like water because of the taste. Some people like it because yes, it's pure and the air is pure and it comes from a very pure area of the world.
Clarity's water menu says that Fiji water comes from the Yakara Valley in Fiji. And here we are, this is it, on the South Pacific island, nearly as far from Britain as you can get. The water itself is pumped up from the rocks beneath my feet into the plant behind me.
They fill around 600,000 bottles a day. It's an American-owned company and most is shipped to the States, but it's sold in the UK in upmarket shops like Waitrose, Selfridges and Harvey Nichols. For Fiji, it's a big deal, employing more than 400 people and accounting for 20% of their exports. The plant gets power from its own diesel generators, but it's getting water to the customer that really racks up the greenhouse gas emissions.
Transport is responsible for a sizable chunk of Fiji Water's environmental impact, and this is the start of a very long journey to the UK. The trucks here take it down to the coast, and then it's moved on to ships, and these containers take it across the world, over 10,000 miles, and that all adds up to a pretty sizable carbon footprint.
There are human as well as environmental questions. Ironically, Fiji water comes from a source discovered during the government's exploration to find water for local people, part funded by British aid money. This resource was never used, and 8 years later, Fiji Water started business. Now the company exports 155 million litres a year, and the government is worried about the scale of the operation.
The aquifer could be damaged beyond repair, and we could lose available resources, particularly in that area, if it was overused. So we are concerned, about that.
Fiji Water says its extraction rate is sustainable and
well within the limits of the rainfall replenishment rate.
Last year, the company paid the government £1.25 million in royalties and says its activities are expanding the water supply.
At a pace that Fiji's government has never achieved.
Welcome to the sharp end of the conflict between global markets and local needs. While bottled Fiji water flows to the UK, 1/3 of Fijians don't have safe tap water. It's something the UN says is a basic human right. Its delivery is not down to bottled water companies, it's down to the government. You can see the problem in the hospital wards.
And we got a patient with typhoid here by the name of Fatima Dama. I'll introduce you to
Hello.
Fatima.
Fatima, I'm Tom. Bula. Fatima. And you are Fatima's mother?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Tell me a bit about Fatima's case.
Fatima is admitted here for last 10 days with typhoid. She's a confirmed typhoid case.
So, how ill was Fatima when she first came in?
She was quite bad. She was brought on wheelchair. She was feeling weak. She was dehydrated, and she was having toxemia. And during the course of treatment, she's much better now. She's eating well.
Typhoid is a fact of life in Fiji, with hundreds of cases every year. Dirty water is one of the causes.
It's a bit frightening, because first time for me to have this kind of sickness.
Yeah. Typhoid can often be carried in water, connected with drinking water and washing hands and things. Do you think it could have come from that?
Yeah, because we drink from a from a stream.
A stream, yeah.
We got just received another patient from our accident and emergency area. Her name is Luciana. She has just come in now with a query typhoid.
This hospital on the second biggest island sees around 2 cases a week. Last year they had 20 from an outbreak in Wailevu after a cyclone flooded the village, and one person died.
Bula, Tom, Tomasi, Siteri.
I'm worried about myself because my gets affected with me and I didn't.
So what do you want this village to have? What would take those worries away?
I want only the water to make us healthy living in the village.
The source of the problem is the source of their water. People and livestock use the river upstream, so dirt and danger flows down here. Jeff Mather's charity hopes to tackle it.
Well, here's the, this is the catchment dam, right here, built 20 years ago. And that's the water intake right there.
So this is where they're getting the water from this pool?
Yes, this is where they're getting the water.
And what's wrong with it at the moment?
It's dirty water.
Would you drink it?
No.
It does seem ironic to me that we can get Fiji borehole water in Britain from an expensive shop, but they can't get clean water here.
Well, this is a case. This is a point in fact that this village has had a death as a result of typhoid. We know they have waterborne diseases. We look at the system and we can say to ourselves, this is not how we would do it in the States or anywhere else. And you're right, why should it be tolerated here?
Fiji Water says it's provided
thousands of cases of water to villages hit by cyclones.
And in those which it helps near the plant with water and sanitation, there have been
no outbreaks of typhoid in over 5 years.
But as the production at Fiji Water increases, there's growing concern that Fijians are losing out.
Most of that money that is being made from selling that bottled water in London, Harrods, or in a Beverly Hill restaurant is actually not being filtered down to the very people that need it the most. So, it's sort of a development that is only benefiting a few and not the majority.
Fiji Water is now promising to part fund more projects to provide communities with safe water. At Nangigi School, the children used to get sick from dirty water. Now it's been made safe, and it's hoped there'll be more scenes like this across the islands.
Do you like this system? Do you like having a good clean water?
Yes.
Yeah?
The company wouldn't give us an interview, but they now claim to be carbon negative. They've been planting trees, switching to renewable energy, and cutting the amount of plastic in their bottles. So, having glimpsed beneath the label, should a taste of water from paradise be considered a pure or a guilty pleasure?
I think it borders on morally being unacceptable to spend hundreds of millions of pounds on bottled water when we have pure drinking water, when at the same time one of the crises that is facing the world is the supply of water. There are many countries in the world who unfortunately haven't got pure tap water. We should be concentrating our efforts on putting that right, in my opinion.
If we want to spend money on water, it'd be better spending on improving water availability and quality in Africa and in Asia. That is the real need. There's no need for us to have bottled water. There's huge need there. It somehow represents the distortion of needs, the manufacturing of wants, and it's an illustration of gross inequalities in the world that we even have it, and that we've even seen it as progress.
Well, here in Shropshire, Bellew believe they are becoming environmentally angelic and socially responsible. They're converting the plant to renewable energy. They don't export to reduce transport. Their plastic bottle breaks down as compost, and all of the profits go into clean water projects. They are one of a new breed of water companies dedicated to more ethical production. And the big boys are feeling the pressure. Volvic now pledged 10 litres of water for Africa for every 1 litre you buy here. So, given this moral dilemma and environmental concerns, are bottled water drinkers going to change their minds?
It depends what they do about it in time, I think. But for me at the moment, it's taste as well as environment.
Maybe I'll just buy a bigger bottle next time and save the little bottles.
I will now think about it. But will I carry a thermos flask around with my own tap water? No.
Of course, one place we drink a lot of bottled water is in our offices, but Maureen here has found a solution. There's no reason why we can't drink tap water and serve that at meetings. And in this case, that meeting is happening at the government's champion of protecting the planet, the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs.
Just to put this in a European
So what is it that made you ditch bottled water within DEFRA?
Well, we decided it was daft. We were spending over £8,000 on bottled mineral water. Our scientists pointed out that the quality of the tap water was just as good, so we've got some jugs in instead.
And was it just about the cost, or was it about the environment as well?
Well, we're making an important symbolic point, we think, about the impact of products and the life cycle they have on our environment. Water is, of course, the basic necessity. We're encouraging people to drink more water for health reasons, but that doesn't mean we have to get water that's perhaps come from around the world in plastic bottles, perhaps, that are made from oil that's come around the world, whose life cycle carbon footprint is pretty devastating when you add it all up, when there is pure water, drinkable water, in the tap at the end of the corridor.
There's not a lot of point in buying it, you're saying, really?
I don't think there's a lot of point in buying bottled water. Maybe fizzy water, there's an argument for that, but certainly from the point of view of the taste, the purity and the environment, drink the tap water.
So it's up to you. You can buy bottled water, try and recycle it, and accept any environmental consequences, or you can drink from the bountiful tap and refill a flask if you're out on the road. That choice is personal, but its impact is global.